What if the greatest barrier to your happiness isn't the world around you, but the voice within your own mind? Beneath our struggles in work, love, and even our darkest moments, there lurks a hidden antagonist, the ego, holding us captive in patterns of anxiety, self-doubt, and endless comparison. Most never recognize the silent grip it has on our decisions and emotions, condemning us to repeat cycles of pain and restlessness. Are you ready to confront the unseen force steering your life? Open these pages and discover the key to true mental freedom. Kill the ego. The Secret to Unlocking True Freedom, written and published by Mindset Liberation. Chapter 1. Understanding the Ego Trap. Imagine waking each morning feeling an ever-present weight in your chest, a subtle unease that refuses to dissipate no matter how favorable your circumstances appear. It is a sensation familiar to many, yet so often misdiagnosed or dismissed entirely. The origin of so much internal turmoil is not some external catastrophe or a single traumatic event, but something woven far deeper into the fabric of our daily existence, the powerful, invisible force of ego. Psychological research indicates that nearly 1 in 5 adults report chronic stress or anxiety related to their sense of self or personal identity. Mental health professionals have found that internal conflicts tied to self-concept, self-image, and a pursuit of validation are key contributors to widespread suffering today. Too often, the ego is misunderstood as simple arrogance or pride, but its reach is far more insidious. It is the voice that compares your progress to that of your peers, whispering inadequacies into your ear when you fall short. It is in the sinking disappointment when social media reveals a friend's recent success, turning appreciation into envy or bitterness. The ego isn't a monster lurking in the shadows. It is that part of your psyche that confuses self-preservation with self-improvement, telling you that you must defend your worth at all costs, even when threat exists only in your perception. In many ways, the ego acts as both the architect and jailer of a prison made of insecurity, a prison so normalized in daily life that most people never notice the bars. How did we fall into this trap? The answer is deceptively simple but difficult to fully grasp, for it developed slowly, starting early in life. From childhood, we are conditioned to believe our value is measured by performance, prettiness, popularity, or productivity. Achievement is praised. Failure, even minor, is quietly discouraged or worse, ridiculed. By adulthood, we are fluent in this unspoken but deeply ingrained language of judgment, directed first at ourselves and then at others. According to social psychologists, this drive to define and defend one's sense of self peaks in environments saturated by competition, such as schools, workplaces, and now, relentlessly, on digital platforms. In one widely cited survey, over 70% of respondents admitted feeling not good enough at some point in the past month, solely because they compared themselves to their peers. Beneath these numbers lies a universal truth. The ego is perpetually feeding, always hungry, and the world has given it endless things to devour. Everyone eventually experiences the snare of the ego, though some feel it more acutely than others. Consider the rising executive who, despite outward success, is haunted by a sense of fraudulence and the fear she will be exposed as unworthy. Or the university student striving for impossible perfection, who experiences moments of debilitating anxiety if his grades slip, convinced his value as a person is nestled in numerical evaluation. These real-life scenarios are not outliers, but vivid expressions of how the ego, unchecked, begins to consume every waking moment, dictating how we see ourselves and how we interpret the world around us. To recognize the ego's role is to uncover one of the root causes of modern mental health struggles, a cause so entwined in personal and social frameworks that it often escapes scrutiny. To question this presence, to truly examine its intricate influence over our lived experience, is to take the first bold step toward authentic freedom, a liberation deeper and richer than most dare to envision. This awakening is subtle at first, marked by the realization that you have been living inside boundaries no one else can see. But as awareness grows, so too does the possibility for transformation, slowly releasing the grip of the ego and exposing entirely new vistas of potential within yourself. The invisible strings of the ego reach into nearly every aspect of our lives, quietly steering our emotional responses, shaping the decisions we make, and subtly dictating how we interact in relationships. Left unnoticed, the ego infiltrates our mood, setting the tone for self-criticism, jealousy, anger, and defensiveness. For instance, someone might receive constructive feedback at work, but rather than calmly evaluating the advice, their ego interprets it as a personal attack. Hurt and resentment quickly replace curiosity and growth, all because the ego is desperate to protect a manufactured sense of self-worth. Psychological studies reveal that when the ego feels threatened, stress hormones like cortisol surge, and learned emotional patterns from childhood resurface defensively, making it difficult to access empathy, reasoning, or openness. As a result, our initial emotional reactions are often irrational but intensely persuasive, creating rifts between our intentions and our actions. The consequences extend deeper when it comes to decision-making. Under the ego's careful manipulation, choices become less about authentic desire and more about image maintenance or reaction to perceived threat. People might choose relationships that validate their status rather than nourish their soul, or they might remain in a job that grinds away their passion simply to uphold a reputation. Take the story of Michael, a successful attorney who, despite earning accolades and achieving every milestone he set, remained stuck in a state of constant anxiety. Instead of exploring fulfilling career possibilities or genuine connections, every major decision became a calculation of potential judgment, how he would appear to friends, family, and rivals. Betrayed by his own need to impress, his world shrank, every brave possibility filtered through the narrow lens of ego. Michael's experience is not uncommon. Research on decision paralysis confirms that perceived threats to ego identity trigger anxiety and narrows the range of choices people are willing to pursue. These findings underscore how ego entrapment diminishes not only our lives' diversity, but also our courage and authenticity. Relationships, too, become battlegrounds for the ego's relentless campaign to affirm and defend itself. The need to win arguments or be perceived as right poisons intimacy, turning loving partnerships into wrestling matches for validation. In one study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology, participants who scored high not on self-confidence, but rather on narcissistic traits, closely linked to an inflated, fragile ego, reported more frequent interpersonal conflict, greater dissatisfaction in relationships, and higher levels of chronic loneliness. When each disagreement or criticism feels like an existential threat, moments of simple misunderstanding easily spiral into deep divisions. Consider Sarah and her partner, who love each other but continually clash over minor differences. Each debate triggers their ego's need to be right, blocking their ability to genuinely listen and causing repeated arguments that chip away at trust and affection over time. Perhaps the most devastating consequence of ego addiction is its relentless assault on self-esteem. Paradoxically, the more we feed the ego, seeking external validation and defending flaws, the weaker we feel inside. Clinical psychologist Dr. Kristen Neff writes that true self-esteem is stable only when it relies on inner self-compassion, not comparison to others or pursuit of perfection. The relentless chase orchestrated by the ego only sharpens feelings of inadequacy, whether in appearance, achievements, or social standing. We become prisoners of unattainable expectations, living under the illusion that joy will arrive with the next triumph, while anxiety, dread, and self-loathing multiply in anticipation of every perceived failure. Why does this persuasive trap ensnare so many intelligent, caring people? Because the ego's tactics are woven seamlessly into culture and family systems, celebrated by stories of competition, pride, and relentless ambition. Early rewards for pleasing authority figures and mirroring social norms set patterns that follow us to adulthood, blooming in environments where worth is always in question. Left unchecked, the ego whispers that you must keep striving, performing, and defending to belong and be loved. This corrosive influence can persist for years, barely detected yet all-consuming, warping our experience of joy, love, and progress. The urgent task is to learn how to see it for what it is and recognize the pathways it uses to keep itself alive. In the next section, we will bring to light the hidden warning signs, the subtle manifestations of ego entrapment that easily escape awareness, yet hold the key to mastery and true internal liberation. The ego trap rarely announces itself boldly. Instead, it reveals its presence through subtle yet pervasive manifestations that permeate daily life. Manifestations often go unnoticed, camouflaged as normal reactions to stress, ambition, or personal disappointment. These can appear as the piercing discomfort felt when a colleague receives praise, the compulsion to create flawless appearances on social media, or the internal pressure that arises whenever you feel slighted or overlooked. For example, consider Carla, an accomplished marketing manager, celebrated by her peers for her innovative campaigns. In meetings, she presents confidently, but on the inside, she is haunted by the idea that one misstep will dissolve her entire reputation. She spends hours editing her emails, fearing imperfection, and experiences a sinking feeling when her ideas receive constructive criticism. Without realizing it, Carla has become so enmeshed in guarding her image that she cannot enjoy her real successes, nor can she develop authentic relationships with her colleagues. Another common symptom of ego entrapment is persistent self-comparison, whether upward toward people who seem more capable or downward, in a subconscious effort to boost one's own image. This can be observed in individuals like Jerry, a college student known for his all-or-nothing drive to be the top of his class. He measures each achievement against someone else's highlight, leading to brief moments of elation, only to be quickly followed by longer episodes of emptiness or anxiety. Jerry obsesses over minor details where he falls short, negating his multiple wins and sacrificing his mental peace for fleeting acknowledgement. Instead of feeling interconnected with classmates and learning communities, he feels isolated and compelled by a relentless drive that never lets him rest. Social media amplifies these patterns, fueling cycles of envy, insecurity, and judgment. When people scroll through carefully curated feeds, they witness staged happiness, achievement, and beauty that do not reflect real lives. The result is a feeling of chronic inadequacy that echoes in the quiet moments of self-reflection. Young adults and adolescents, in particular, have been shown in research studies to experience increased rates of anxiety and depressive symptoms tied directly to constant online comparison and ego-driven interactions. These subtle behaviors, competing for likes, dwelling on unreturned messages, or disguising vulnerability with filters, illustrate how the ego can quietly direct our choices and emotional responses. Recognizing these symptoms in our own lives is not an admission of weakness, but a vital awakening. It is the first pivotal step toward healing and reclaiming genuine mental freedom. The act of self-observation breaks the spell, allowing us for the first time to stand apart from the ego's demands and react with clarity. Acknowledging the ego trap with honesty strips it of its power, opening doors to alternative perspectives, where self-worth is no longer tied to shifting standards or endless comparison. Healing begins by identifying how the ego has written your personal narrative, and only with this awareness can you start to rewrite that story on your own terms. This work requires ongoing honesty and commitment to inner clarity. The ability to spot the ego's presence as it arises sharpens your insight, empowering you to disengage from well-worn cycles of doubt and craving. The courage to witness the ego's hold in your relationships, ambitions, and moments of pain is both the challenge and the promise of genuine self-liberation. Every step of acknowledgement takes you closer to mental well-being, breaking chains that may have bound you for years in silence. As we turn the page, the next chapter will uncover how to detach from false identities built by ego, granting you the chance to connect with your authentic self beyond illusion and pretension. Remember, truly understanding the nature of your mental health struggle is the crucial first step toward genuine change. Prepare yourself to journey deeper, where the illusion unravels and solutions begin to emerge. Chapter 2: Detaching from False Identity. What if the story you have been telling yourself about who you are is only a small fragment of your truth, carefully shaped by influences beyond your control? Imagine breaking free from the limiting definitions that have shadowed every aspiration, relationship, and moment of self-reflection. Detaching from false identity is not just a solution, it is the foundation for rejuvenating your entire experience of life. Research shows that our sense of self is shaped by a complex web of family expectations, cultural standards, past criticism, and moments of validation or defeat. A landmark study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that most adults perceive their self-concept as a blend of their own aspirations and a reflection of the ideals imposed by figures of authority throughout childhood. From an early age, we learn to form our identities through a patchwork of roles: the achiever, the caretaker, the rebel, or the forgotten sibling, each crafted to fit the expectations around us. Compelling personal stories and cases reinforce just how widespread this phenomenon has become. Consider Thomas, who has always assumed that his place in the world was defined solely by being a successful provider. From early on, every decision revolved around ensuring he was seen as responsible, diligent, and necessary. Yet, as the years passed and external praise grew less frequent, he found himself lost, plagued by feelings of emptiness and a sense that something essential was missing. He realized that so much of what had once felt genuinely him was an inheritance of other people's ideas or cultural cliches, never consciously chosen. Tomas's courage to investigate his true self and to eventually let go of the labels that had restricted him is reflected in countless others who reach a breaking point and seek freedom from confining roles. Even science affirms that transformation is possible and well within reach. Neuroscientists have demonstrated the incredible plasticity of the brain, showing that beliefs and behaviors entrenched by years of repetition can change dramatically when individuals choose and consistently practice new ways of thinking. Dr. Carol Dweck's celebrated work on mindset theory illustrates how beliefs adopted about identity and intelligence transform everything from resilience under stress to the basic joy of living. In one of her studies, simply encouraging students to see their abilities as adaptable and evolving rather than fixed or assigned led to greater achievement and mental well-being over time. These findings are powerful reminders. The identities we hold most dearly are not set in stone, and neither are the emotional states they produce. It is monumentally liberating to realize that every layer we peel away from inherited or adopted labels brings us closer to the authentic core that is uniquely ours. Detachment from a false identity requires neither anger nor denial of the past, but a gentle, determined willingness to re-examine beliefs with fresh eyes. You do not need anyone's permission to change the story you tell about yourself. You have within you the potential to author your own definitions. In truth, this ongoing process is at the heart of self-liberation and renewed confidence. As you move forward, reflect with hope and eagerness. You now possess the insight and ability to shed what no longer fits. This powerful first step in transforming your sense of self paves the way for deeper connections and a more vibrant relationship with life, fueling the motivation to grow without restriction. The effectiveness of detaching from false identity stems from its direct challenge to the root mechanisms of inner suffering. When a person lives under the shadow of someone else's expectations or internalized judgments, daily life becomes a reactive cycle, an endless attempt to measure up or avoid failure in roles never consciously chosen. The act of peeling away these inherited identities interrupts this cycle and allows authentic values and desires to rise to the surface. According to psychologists specializing in identity development, this is where true healing begins. In a 2020 meta-analysis published in Clinical Psychology Review, individuals who reported success in overcoming chronic anxiety or depression often described a pivotal moment when they questioned and then relinquished an outdated or imposed self-concept. Letting these labels go, even temporarily, allowed people to experience renewed creativity, self-acceptance, and emotional balance. Scientists have mapped brain activity during identity shifts, and their discovery is profound. As rigid self-perceptions dissolve, neural pathways linked to anxiety and stress lose dominance, while those associated with openness, self-regulation, and learning become more active. Dr. Norman Farb's research at the University of Toronto showed that mindfulness, paying curious, non-judgmental attention to moment-to-moment experience, can help individuals distinguish between conditioned roles and authentic feelings. Brain scans revealed reduced activity in the narrative self network, responsible for reinforcing old stories, and greater connectivity in the experiencing self, liberating the mind to embrace reality as it is, rather than how it is supposed to be. The impact of this shift on well-being is mirrored in countless personal journeys, such as the story of Olivia, a former honors student raised to believe her value lay in perfection and relentless striving. Each failed test haunted her sense of worth, and even praise failed to inspire more than momentary relief. When overwhelming anxiety forced a break from school, Olivia began therapy, emphasizing self-awareness and identity flexibility. Carefully guided by her therapist, she started to catalog beliefs she'd accepted without question. I must never be wrong. Mistakes mean I am weak. I am only lovable if I succeed. Through courageous self-examination and regular exercises in detachment, Olivia discovered the space between who she truly was and who she had been expected to become. Though challenging, this reconciliation was transformative. Freed from self-imposed perfection, Olivia embraced a far wider range of experiences, values, and relationships that energized rather than depleted her. Real transformation, as demonstrated by both clinical evidence and actual lives, demands more than insight alone. It requires the willingness to confront internal discomfort and the patience to accept uncertainty without rigid roles as safety nets. This is not an exercise in erasing the past, but in growing beyond inherited limits, carving out a space where real joy, spontaneity, and acceptance can thrive. As the false identity recedes, anxiety and insecurity lose their grip, replaced by an inner confidence grounded in reality rather than illusion. The urgency in adopting this approach cannot be overstated. Avoiding the work only intensifies disconnection and confusion, while committing to it, even imperfectly, provides constant rewards, clearer intentions, healthier relationships, and a life rooted in the clarity of self-awareness. Breaking free from these roles, however familiar or comfortable, ushers in a period of genuine change, confirming that the skills needed to build a healthy, adaptive identity are available to anyone committed to the journey. Change begins not with an epic leap, but with small steps consciously taken in the direction of your truest self. The art of detaching from false identity is wonderfully practical when broken down into a daily practice of mindfulness, reflection, and gentle disruption of old patterns. The journey begins with noticing. Each morning, as you wake and prepare to face the world, pause long enough to observe your first thoughts about who you need to be that day. Quietly ask yourself, am I gearing up to perform a role, or am I ready to express who I genuinely am? This question, repeated daily, builds a bridge between habitual identity and authentic presence. Even this single shift in morning awareness is a quiet victory, a powerful sign that you are reclaiming space from old definitions. A practical exercise follows simply but powerfully. Throughout your day, when you notice tension, perhaps before a meeting or encountering someone who triggers self-doubt, pause to identify which identity script is at play. Are you acting the perfectionist, the pleaser, the quiet observer only because that's what's expected? Say it aloud, or write it down as, right now I am believing I must be to be okay. Then, gently challenge the thought. Ask, is this actually true in this moment? This step exposes the automatic nature of identity traps and interrupts the emotion-behavior loop before it gains force. Celebrate every instance you recognize, for awareness dismantles the power of compulsive roles in real time. Building momentum is easier when milestones are clear and celebrated. At the end of each day, journal a single moment you noticed yourself about to slip into a familiar role and chose, however briefly, a more honest response instead. This might be as simple as admitting confusion in a discussion rather than pretending to know the answer, or acknowledging fatigue rather than pushing past your limits. Each of these moments is a victory. These subtle acts of honesty gradually untangle you from rigidity and reveal the fluidity of who you truly are. On more challenging days, try a grounding exercise. Close your eyes and imagine each inherited label as a pebble you set deliberately on the ground. For 5 slow breaths, picture yourself lighter each time you release a pebble. This visualization imprints a sense of emotional relief and symbolizes the ongoing process of letting go. Inner change is most sustainable when you support it with moments of celebration. Congratulate yourself when you catch a limiting belief or choose a new response. This positive reinforcement creates new neural pathways, making the authentic choice easier the next time. Even registering a sense of relief or clarity for a few seconds reinforces your progress. Remember, the objective is not perfection, but steady, compassionate disruption of old patterns. As your days accumulate these small wins, your resilience grows and a nourishing confidence takes root, fueling even braver growth in the future. As you carry these exercises into the flow of daily life, notice how identifying and releasing false identity opens new possibilities for connection, creativity, and inner calm. The more you engage in this practice, the more tangible your sense of freedom becomes, and with it, the trust that you can build a life aligned with your own truth. In the next chapter, prepare to discover how releasing the need to win shifts life's focus from unhealthy competition to deep, sustainable fulfillment. Remember, each gentle act of awareness is its own form of liberation. To stay inspired as you continue your journey, consider joining Mindset Liberation. Let us know in the comments what roles you are choosing to leave behind, and share the progress or challenges you experience on the path ahead. Chapter 3. Releasing the Need to Win. Imagine how much lighter your days would feel if you were no longer haunted by the pressure to win every battle, be it personal, professional, or even within your own mind. The need to win is a subtle, relentless driver, powering competition not just against others, but sometimes against your own impossible standards. This compulsion to come out on top is not simply a personal quirk. It is a widespread force shaped by culture, education, and social expectation. A global workplace study by the American Psychological Association found that over 60% of adults report frequent stress related to comparisons and a desire for dominance in daily tasks or job performance. School environments foster this drive early on through tests, sports, and social rankings, embedding the association between self-worth and the ability to outdo peers. As adults, the norm is only amplified, intertwining career evaluations, relationship dynamics, and even self-care goals with underlying themes of competition. Psychologists have traced the origins of the need to win to two main sources: early conditioning and a mistaken belief that only victory guarantees safety or belonging. Sometimes entire identities are built around this principle. For example, Raj, a sales manager, was raised in a home where success meant everything, and falling short was met with disappointment. Now, even after years of achievement, he wakes up anxious each morning, already tallying the invisible scoreboard of daily goals. If he closes the highest number of deals or receives the best feedback, he feels a surge of temporary validation. If not, he questions his worth. Stories like Raj's are not unique. Researchers from Stanford University tested hundreds of high-achieving professionals and found that the need-to-win mindset correlated strongly with chronic burnout, relationship dissatisfaction, and increased vulnerability to depression. The link was clear. The more a person's sense of peace depended on external victories, the less stable and less joyful their life became. Still, there is powerful hope here, because the need to win is not a permanent state. Rather, it is a pattern, and all patterns can be changed. Experts such as Dr. Brené Brown and Dr. Kristen Neff advocate for a shift from external measures of success to inner sources of fulfillment. Instead of seeing each interaction or event as a contest, they suggest reframing experiences as opportunities to learn, connect, and grow. The real transformation begins as soon as you realize your value does not hinge on your victories. One compelling case study involved a team of coworkers who, rather than competing over credit for a finished project, began celebrating collective growth and mutual support. Not only did their stress levels drop, but their results actually improved, and interpersonal conflict diminished as collaboration replaced rivalry. This is where the path forward becomes vibrant and clear. By releasing the compulsion to win at any cost, you free yourself to experience deeper satisfaction and create more authentic relationships. You invite a confident, peaceful mindset that transforms setbacks into learning, removing fear and making space for genuine achievement. As you journey through this chapter, understand that the ability to transform your relationship to winning is already within you, waiting to be awakened by conscious reflection and new habits. That natural drive for growth can truly flourish when rooted in purpose and self-acceptance rather than the endless chase for validation. Letting go of the need to win shifts both mindset and emotional reality in ways that are deeply transformative. This approach is effective because it directly interrupts the endless, often exhausting cycle of striving for dominance and validation, replacing it with a focus on growth, genuine satisfaction, and meaningful relationships. Psychologically, when people are fixated on victory, the brain's reward system, particularly areas linked to dopamine, lights up only when an external goal is achieved. The intense highs of success are inevitably shadowed by lows when the outcome falls short. Releasing the need to win disrupts this harsh rhythm and instead teaches the mind and body to derive fulfillment from process, progress, and authentic self-expression, regardless of the public scoreboard. Neuroscientific studies led by Dr. Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin have shown that when individuals detach from external validation and instead cultivate intrinsic motivation, levels of stress hormones decrease, while overall mood and resilience increase. These physiological shifts are tangible proof that true contentment and strength begin internally. This method stands up not only under scientific scrutiny, but also under the demands of real life. Consider the powerful story of Maya, a once competitive athlete whose entire identity had been anchored in collecting trophies and breaking records. For years, every practice, every meet, and even casual exercise became a battlefield, and her joy disappeared whenever she lost. After facing a significant injury that ended her career prematurely, Maya spiraled into bitterness and a sense of worthlessness. At the urging of a counselor, she began working on shifting her focus from the outcome of every encounter to the attitude and effort she brought to each day. The early work was uncomfortable, marked by self-doubt and feeling lost without an external benchmark for her identity. But with guidance and consistent practice, journaling about learning experiences, gratitude for personal progress, and connecting with fellow former athletes on similar journeys, she found herself experiencing pleasure in training, volunteering, and even facing setbacks as opportunities to reflect and grow. Now, when Maya faces adversity or observes others' successes, she doesn't automatically turn it into a competition. Instead, she is able to experience pride for others, encourage them, and recognize her own value apart from the final score. This healing changed her relationships, her mental health, and her future dreams. On a larger scale, organizations and schools that move from a competition-based framework to one centered on community and growth have shown dramatic improvements in both well-being and long-term success for their members. Teachers who reward effort, teamwork, and curiosity notice their students feel safer, more motivated, and more creative. Businesses that value learning over winning foster cultures where employees take healthy risks and work with greater collaboration, ultimately driving innovation and retention. These collective outcomes have been backed by research in journals such as Organizational Dynamics, where studies confirm lower employee turnover and higher satisfaction in such environments. The necessity of breaking free from the compulsive need to win extends far beyond self-improvement. It is an urgent remedy for anxiety, relational tension, and chronic dissatisfaction. Recognizing that true fulfillment cannot be won in a contest, but must be nurtured from within, keeps us anchored during storms and humble during triumphs. Learning and practicing this method is not a surrender of ambition, but a release of the suffocating grip of comparison, opening the way for sustained growth, lasting self-respect, and a far richer version of success. Releasing the need to win is a courageous process grounded in practical daily choices. The first step is to shine a gentle light of awareness on your habits of comparison and competition. Throughout your day, catch yourself in moments where you measure success purely by being better than someone else, whether it's in a meeting, a conversation, or even alone with your thoughts. Each time you notice this reflex, take a slow, deep breath and shift your perspective by quietly asking, "What can I learn from this moment?" Or, "How have I grown, regardless of whether I come out ahead?" The act of replacing a competitive question with one about growth is simple, but each time you do it, you disrupt an old pattern and lay foundation for new habits. Celebrate these moments of recognition as real wins, acknowledging that every attempt to change your thinking is a testament to your desire for transformation. Another effective exercise to foster this mindset is journaling or quick note-taking at the end of your day. Take 5 minutes to write about a scenario when the urge to win appeared front and center. Describe what triggered it, how you would have reacted in the past, and how you responded differently today, or how you might next time. This practice turns theoretical awareness into concrete self-understanding, making invisible patterns visible and changing what once felt automatic. These small breakthroughs, catching yourself mid-comparison or reconsidering what a win truly means, are subtle yet significant. Over time, you'll accumulate evidence that you're not bound to old habits, giving you a tangible sense of momentum and growing confidence. Practice gratitude for both your progress and the successes of others. Every day, when jealousy, competition, or disappointment bubbles up, pause to appreciate another person's achievement or strengths out loud, even just in your private reflections. A simple acknowledgement such as, "I'm glad they succeeded," can break down the wall of rivalry and open you to connection and peace. This humble practice not only softens defensiveness, but gradually makes goodwill your instinctual response. For many, this becomes a source of deep relief and positive energy. To further anchor this method, choose one task or activity each day where you intentionally show up without needing to win. It might be expressing your honest opinion without worrying about being the smartest, completing a project focusing only on effort and learning, or simply listening without planning a witty comeback. Enjoy the experience for what it is, noticing how your body and mind relax when the stakes are lowered. These conscious experiments slowly rewire your brain, allowing a quieter self-assurance to grow with every authentic action you take. Before closing this chapter, pause to honor the progress you have made, however small it may feel. The seeds of change often begin unseen, growing quietly as each layer of compulsive competition falls away. What you are creating is a foundation for freedom and deeper fulfillment. In the journey ahead, get ready to silence your inner critic and continue replacing anxiety with self-acceptance and strength. If you found this chapter helpful, join the conversation at Mindset Liberation. Let us know how your story with competition is changing, or share the wins you're most proud of in your growth so far. Your voice inspires others, and this community grows stronger with every shared step forward. Chapter 4: Silencing the Inner Critic. Inside every mind is a voice that never seems to rest, a critic that questions worthiness and second-guesses decisions, stirring up doubt at the very edge of accomplishment. What if you could quiet that harsh voice and experience a life where encouragement, acceptance, and self-trust take its place? The solution of silencing the inner critic stands as one of the most transformative shifts available to anyone on the path to mental well-being. The origins of the inner critic are complex, rooted in messages absorbed during childhood, feedback from authority figures, and personal interpretations of setbacks or failures. Psychologists often refer to this internal adversary as the superego or the punitive self, a mental habit that once tried to protect you by preventing mistakes but over time hardened into an opposing force, undermining self-worth and confidence at every turn. The prevalence of this issue is astonishing. Research from the National Institute of Mental Health has shown that over 70% of adults admit to frequent periods of negative self-talk, with nearly 40% reporting that their inner dialogue affects daily decisions and overall mood. In one particularly illuminating study by Dr. Ethan Kross at the University of Michigan, heightened inner criticism was not only associated with increased anxiety and depressive symptoms, but also a significantly lower rate of goal achievement. People stalled their own growth, not for lack of skill or hope, but because mental commentary paralyzed action before it could truly begin. This reveals how the inner critic is not simply a nuisance, but a major hurdle to self-expression, personal courage, and lasting success. Real lives bear out these statistics in profoundly relatable ways. Take the example of Jana, a graphic designer whose creative spark once shone brightly. As her career advanced, her inner voice changed from playful curiosity to biting critique, a stream of self-imposed demands for perfection, coupled with relentless reminders of mistakes or rejected projects. The pressure grew not from her bosses or clients, but from her own mind. which had learned to interpret every challenge as evidence of inadequacy. Only when Jana named and then actively questioned this inner narrator did she experience real relief. By inviting self-compassion and practicing new responses to her critic, she rediscovered joy in her work and expanded her sense of what was possible well beyond old limits. Hope flows from the truth that the inner critic is not an inescapable fact of life, but rather a pattern that can be reshaped with practice and intention. Recognizing the critic's voice is not your authentic self, but an echo of the past, one that can be softened and eventually nurtured into a quieter, kinder guide. As you embrace this process, you hold the power to transform not only your self-perception, but the very possibilities available to you in each moment ahead. The first step to silencing the inner critic is within your control, and every act of awareness moves you closer to a mindset that supports creativity, courage, and lasting well-being. Silencing the inner critic works because it intercepts a core driver of self-sabotage and mental distress right where it begins: the personal narrative. For so many, negative self-talk becomes entrenched after years of internalizing critical feedback, absorbing society's unrealistic standards, and interpreting adversity as evidence of inadequacy rather than simply as a part of learning or growth. When individuals deliberately intervene and shift this harsh internal monologue, the nervous system begins to relax and psychological flexibility increases. Clinical research led by Dr. Kristen Neff, a pioneer in the science of self-compassion, demonstrates that regularly practicing kinder self-talk not only decreases symptoms of anxiety and depression, but actually strengthens motivation and resilience. In one significant study, participants taught to respond to setbacks with warmth and encouragement instead of criticism became better problem solvers and reported less emotional exhaustion over time. The underlying effectiveness of this process also rests on how self-criticism constricts the brain's creative and thoughtful capacities. Research in neuropsychology shows that when criticism is high, especially when chronic, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning and creative thinking, becomes overrun by the fear centers of the brain, such as the amygdala. This creates what's often felt as mental paralysis, a flood of hesitation, and a strong pull to avoid new risks or opportunities. Interrupting the cycle of inner criticism gently turns the switch from crisis to calm, allowing access to the higher cognitive and emotional resources needed for growth. Even a simple daily moment of recognizing, "This is my inner critic, not my true self," can start to retrain neural pathways over time, redirecting the mind toward possibility rather than defensiveness or defeat. A compelling real-life example comes from Alex, a medical student struggling under the weight of academic pressure and self-doubt. His performance on exams became less about mastery and more about avoiding mistakes, as the critical inner commentary intensified before, during, and after each test. This echo of fear and criticism was not only affecting his confidence, but also eroding his memory retention and ability to think clearly. At the urging of a mentor, Alex began a targeted practice of noticing every self-condemning thought, labeling it, and then intentionally countering it with a supportive response, such as, "I am learning. Mistakes are part of my progress." As mundane as it seemed, this exercise radically shifted his experience. Anxiety lessened, his performance improved, and he discovered with time a steady trust in both his ability and his process. Whether in careers, relationships, or creative pursuits, silencing the inner critic is an urgent necessity for anyone longing to live fully and authentically. Left unchecked, this mental habit does far more than bruise self-esteem. It can constrict potential, deepen emotional pain, and stall essential risk-taking that leads to innovation and joy. Each moment spent challenging this habitual voice chips away at years of ingrained negativity and builds momentum in a new, healthier direction. Embracing this practice, even when it feels difficult, stands as a radical declaration of self-worth and a powerful step toward lasting personal transformation. Empowering yourself to silence the inner critic begins with inviting awareness and kindness into your self-talk, transforming patterns that have been with you for years, perhaps for a lifetime. The first step is to simply catch the critic at work. Often, negativity sneaks in so naturally that you barely notice the familiar refrain, "You're not good enough. Why did you even try? You'll never get it right." The moment you notice such a phrase arise, picture it as an alert, a gentle pause that breaks the invisible flow. Recognize this critical voice as only a habit, not a verdict, and name it softly. That's the critic, not the truth. When you identify the inner critic by name, it loses some of its authority, and this simple act is a small win that deserves acknowledgement each time it occurs. With this foundation, move to gently challenge the critic's statements. Counter every declaration of doubt with a realistic, compassionate response, something you'd say to encourage a good friend. If your critic says you're failing, answer with patience. Everyone stumbles, and every mistake is a step forward. This form of mindful self-dialogue might feel awkward at first, but practice builds fluency. For added support, keep a journal just for self-compassionate replies. Write out your critic's harshest lines, then respond beneath with your own, affirming truths. Studies show that seeing these exchanges written out not only diffuses their power, but allows positive voices to become more memorable and instinctive in moments of stress. Another practical technique is to anchor a supportive phrase you can reach for all day, especially in high-pressure circumstances. A phrase as simple as, "I am learning as I go," "It's okay to grow at my own pace," or "I offer myself understanding," brings you out of automatic criticism and into conscious acceptance. Whenever tension rises, quietly repeat your anchor, experiencing how your body responds, noticing the subtle shift in mood. Each repetition makes this gentle perspective more accessible, and with time becomes your new inner soundtrack. Set yourself up for small daily victories. At the end of each day, reflect on one moment where you recognized the critic's voice and chose to respond differently. Perhaps you paused before an important conversation, exchanged criticism for encouragement, or offered forgiveness instead of blame. Remember that every time you notice and redirect a critical thought, you rewire your brain for resilience, and each of these micro-wins is another brick in the foundation of self-trust. Take a deep breath and give yourself credit for each effort, because even a single gentle word marks meaningful momentum in your healing journey. Keep these tools close as you move forward, for the inner critic's volume can fluctuate with new situations or challenges. But each step, each compassionate response you practice, gradually turns down its volume and elevates your voice of encouragement. As you continue developing this habit, you'll find yourself meeting each day's trials and opportunities with increasing confidence and clarity. Your progress sets the stage for what's next, learning to practice radical acceptance, the powerful process of embracing yourself and your life exactly as they are, without resistance or denial. Stay with mindset liberation as the path to genuine peace unfolds, and share your experiences below. Your story might be just what someone else needs to take their first step. Chapter 5. Practicing Radical Acceptance. There is a profound strength in meeting life as it is, even when reality differs from what you believed it should be. Practicing radical acceptance means turning toward yourself and your circumstances with courage, curiosity, and compassion, rather than with resistance or judgment. Imagine exchanging the exhausting struggle of fighting reality for the remarkable freedom of embracing it fully. Pain, joy, limitations, and all. This practice is not surrender or passivity. It is an invitation to meet life head-on with greater power, wisdom, and serenity than you imagined possible. The origins of radical acceptance reach deep into both ancient philosophy and modern psychology. Buddhist teachings have for centuries encouraged surrender to what is, understanding that peace is found not through changing every detail of the external world, but by transforming your internal response to whatever arises. In contemporary psychology, groundbreaking therapists like Dr. Marsha Linehan built entire treatment models around the idea that true healing requires this unfiltered acceptance as a core skill for emotional regulation and well-being. It is striking how often the absence of acceptance becomes a source of ongoing pain. The American Psychological Association reports that over half of all adults identify persistent regret, rumination, or inability to move on from disappointments as prime factors in their struggles with anxiety and depression. When old wounds, mistakes, unexpected losses, or personal traits become battlegrounds for relentless criticism or denial, the resulting distress grows with every attempt to resist them. Stories like Mia's illuminate this truth. Mia spent years wishing away her traumatic childhood, finding relationships and opportunities haunted not by events themselves, but by an unwillingness to acknowledge what was real and unavoidable. Only when she stopped spending energy resisting her history and shifted to accepting it, without excusing injustice or denying hurt, did she find the ground beneath her feet again. Radical acceptance offered a foundation sturdy enough to carry her forward, no longer weighed down by the futility of denial. The science behind radical acceptance is as persuasive as its philosophy. Studies published in the Journal of Contextual Behavioral Science reveal that individuals who deliberately practice acceptance techniques experience significant reductions in stress-related symptoms and emotional avoidance. They report greater life satisfaction and resilience, even when facing chronic pain, grief, or ongoing challenges. This is possible because acceptance interrupts destructive cycles of avoidance and allows people to process, release, and ultimately integrate challenging emotions, rather than becoming trapped in them. Neuroscientifically, acceptance increases activity in brain networks linked to self-soothing and reduces activity in networks associated with fear and resistance, fostering a calmer, more adaptive baseline state. Hope lies not in pretending your burdens do not exist, but in shifting your stance toward them, holding yourself and your circumstances with honesty and empathy. You already possess the capacity to move into radical acceptance, and each attempt, no matter how imperfect, builds strength and peace for tomorrow. Each moment you choose acceptance is another foundation stone for lasting emotional freedom, showing you that no matter what has happened or will happen, you can meet life on your own terms and prosper. Radical acceptance is effective because it addresses the conflict at the very heart of human suffering, the urge to resist or deny painful truths that cannot be changed. When you fight reality, even with the best intentions, that fight becomes its own source of pain, layering anxiety, shame, guilt, or exhaustion on top of whatever original event has triggered distress. By choosing to accept what is, you interrupt a feedback loop of avoidance and self-punishment and instead allow the healing process to begin. Modern psychological research robustly supports this, showing that acceptance is not a passive resignation, but an active mental shift with powerful outcomes. A landmark study from Harvard Medical School found that individuals trained in acceptance-based interventions showed marked improvement in mood and lower levels of physiological stress compared to those who engaged in avoidance or suppression techniques. Scans revealed changes in the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, indicating a reduction in emotional overload and an increase in self-regulatory capacity. Radical acceptance works not because it eliminates hardship, but because it makes hardship bearable, placing your mind and body in a position to recover and adapt. When people refuse to accept the truth of a loss, a mistake, or a limitation, every thought and action can unconsciously turn into an effort to make it not so, which leads only to endless inner battles and cycling distress. Acceptance, on the other hand, clears space for new choices. Dr. Tara Brach, a psychologist and meditation teacher, calls this the gateway to freedom, because acceptance invites you to stop warring with life and start building from exactly where you are. Personal transformation stories drive this truth home. Consider the journey of David, a father who struggled with the irreversible effects of his son's accident. David spent years obsessed with what-ifs, replaying every possible scenario in an attempt to rewrite reality. He found little comfort in blame and lost years to anger and sorrow that, despite how understandable, changed nothing. In therapy, he encountered the concept of radical acceptance and learned the difference between liking something and accepting it. The practice was gritty and daunting, telling the truth about what had happened, allowing waves of sadness or helplessness to move through him rather than forcing them away. Gradually, he noticed how his world became less defined by pain and more open to healing. He was able to support his son in the present, reconnect with his family, and even find space for hope and meaning. His suffering did not disappear. Rather, it stopped expanding because it was finally witnessed, honored, and given a place. Science and story both affirm that resistance keeps suffering stagnant, while acceptance releases its grip slide by slide. By learning to face facts you cannot alter, you claim back the energy that was wasted fighting them and begin to engage with solutions, growth, and meaning. This approach takes courage and persistence, but delivers peace and possibility that simply cannot be accessed while denial remains in command. Radical acceptance, then, is not about giving up, but about gaining back the future that resistance has kept from you. Bringing radical acceptance into your daily life does not require dramatic gestures. It can begin quietly, through purposefully honest engagement with yourself as situations unfold. Start by choosing each day one aspect of your life that triggers resistance, a memory that churns, a mistake that stings, a current reality you wish were different. With gentle determination, say aloud or write down, "This is what's true for me right now. It may not be what I want, but I am willing to accept that it exists." This first act of naming what is real gives shape to the uncertainty and already begins the work of loosening its power. Building on this new awareness, try the practice of mindful witnessing. When painful feelings rise, instead of fighting them or distracting yourself, sit still for 60 seconds with your palm on your heart, breathing slowly and repeating, "I see you, I allow you, I do not need to fix you this moment." This technique helps to anchor acceptance as an embodied experience, not just a mental exercise. As you grow in this practice, extend acceptance from single events to ongoing circumstances that have shaped your story. Reflect on past moments you've judged harshly, perhaps regrets or traits you have struggled to forgive. Revisit these moments and offer a silent statement. "I acknowledge what happened. I release the demand that it be any different." You might write about an old regret, ending the description with, "And still I am here, worthy and capable of moving forward." With time, these micro-moments accumulate, teaching your nervous system safety and flexibility, gradually diminishing the emotional sting of the past. Celebrate each shift as a substantial achievement, even if it simply means you fought your judgments for a few minutes less today than yesterday. Each time you consciously catch yourself in resistance and steer toward acceptance is a step on the path to lasting well-being. These incremental victories are not small at all. Collectively, they stack up to form a steady, supportive base of resilience. Embrace the use of gentle affirmation cards or reminders, placing them where your eyes land during stressful moments. A note on your bathroom mirror reading, "Everything belongs. I choose to accept what is," can serve as a grounding force whenever your old habit to resist resurfaces. Perhaps the most powerful mind shift is to reframe acceptance as a loyal friend rather than a concession. See it as your ally, setting you free to use your energy for creativity, relationships, or healing. When frustration or grief tries to convince you accepting reality is weak, answer with, "Acceptance is how I reclaim my strength. It doesn't mean I approve, but I choose my peace over struggle." Pause at least once a day to thank yourself for making the courageous choice to meet reality head-on, regardless of discomfort. The more you return to this path, the less intimidating setbacks will feel, and the more empowered you become to shape your present and future with open hands. As you nurture this newfound strength, prepare for the next step, learning to live without comparison, embracing a freedom that is rooted in your own values rather than the shifting standards of others. To continue your progress, subscribe to Mindset Liberation and share below a moment where acceptance brought relief or courage in your life. You're not alone. The journey toward radical acceptance grows stronger and brighter every time a new voice shares what is possible. Chapter 6: Living Without Comparison. What would your life become if you stopped measuring it against the yardstick of someone else's success, appearance, or happiness? Imagine a reality in which your achievements, joys, and even your struggles were recognized as uniquely your own, untarnished by the endless influence of comparison. Living without comparison is an act of quiet rebellion in a culture saturated with social media highlight reels, status-driven expectations, and subtle or glaring reminders to keep up. For many, comparison is such a constant backdrop that it seems almost invisible, yet its effects are powerful and far-reaching, fueling anxiety, self-doubt, and a perpetual sense of inadequacy. According to recent findings by the Pew Research Center, more than 60% of adults admit that social comparison through online platforms frequently makes them feel worse about their own lives. Studies in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology repeatedly demonstrate that frequent comparison is linked not only to dips in mood, but also to chronic dissatisfaction and a diminished sense of personal purpose. The origins of the comparison trap lie in both ancient wiring and modern reinforcement. Human beings are inherently social creatures, once hardwired to compare in order to fit into small groups, learn from others' successes, and avoid threats. While these instincts were once necessary for survival, today they are constantly triggered by algorithmic feeds, performance culture at work, and even family expectations that showcase competition over authentic individuality. Compassion-focused therapists, including Dr. Kristen Neff, point to early school experiences, socialization patterns, and even childhood praise systems that emphasize outperforming others as pivotal in rooting comparison as a reflex. Growing up, the highest grades, the fastest runner, or those with the most accolades often received the greatest applause, leaving those who learned different, quieter skills to feel perpetually behind. Real-life stories abound, demonstrating just how common and quietly exhausting this cycle can be. Take Erin, who enjoyed running as a daily ritual until she joined an online fitness group, where running logs and photo-fueled metrics overtook her simple pleasure. Suddenly, her morning jogs left her discouraged because she ran slower or less frequently than others in the group. Years of tranquil enjoyment were overshadowed by a flood of self-judgment, making her question whether she should even bother at all. Erin's struggle mirrors an experience shared by millions, where joyful routines or hard-earned progress are eroded by the corrosive effects of continual comparison. Yet, there is hope and immense strength to be found in stepping off the comparison treadmill. Living without comparison does not mean you lose ambition or stop aspiring to grow. It means you free yourself from the oppressive, shifting benchmarks set by others, and instead focus on internal growth. This shift empowers you to uncover what brings you authentic meaning, joy, and fulfillment, a path forward based on personal values, not external validation. You have the ability to choose a perspective anchored in gratitude and genuine self-regard, transforming how you move through the world. The invitation is to step fully into your own journey, releasing the burdensome question of how do I measure up, and replacing it with the enlivening question, who am I becoming on my own terms? This is the foundation of living without comparison, and the next pages will help you make it real. Learning to live without comparison is uniquely effective because it targets the psychological engine that fuels so much self-doubt, envy, and chronic discontent. By changing the internal lens through which you view others and yourself, you disengage from the game of perpetual ranking in which there are no lasting winners. Instead, you reclaim the authority to define your own values and direction. This approach draws on established truths in human psychology. Social comparison is a natural tendency, but it becomes harmful when it overrides personal meaning and growth. Scientific research highlights this distinction clearly. In a landmark study published in Psychological Science, participants instructed to focus on self-referenced progress instead of external comparison reported greater personal satisfaction, more goal achievement, and a marked reduction in feelings of inadequacy. Functional MRI scans further revealed that people practicing self-focused reflection experienced increased activity in the brain's reward centers and felt more emotionally balanced over time. The efficacy of escaping the comparison trap is also evident in its ripple effects on self-esteem and resilience. Harvard psychologist Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar's research into the habits of the world's happiest individuals shows that the most content among us consistently turn their awareness inward to track their personal path, instead of gauging worth by keeping pace with others. When this inward shift happens, achievements no longer depend on besting peers or meeting artificially constructed standards. Instead, satisfaction comes from the recognition of growth and authenticity, where every small victory is meaningful because it aligns with personal purpose rather than public applause. A powerful story that brings this to life is Alex's. For years, Alex measured himself through the success of his coworkers and declarations of accomplishment on social media. Every friend's promotion, engagement announcement, or photo from an exotic trip triggered doubt in his own choices and diminished the everyday joys he once found sufficient. The turning point came during a session with a therapist, where Alex realized his values had become muddled by constant exposure to others' highlight reels. Through guided exercises, Alex began keeping a journal focused on his own progress, capturing the moments of growth, the small risks taken, and the kindnesses offered without any need for outside validation. Over time, a sense of self-assurance replaced envy, and he experienced a clarity in decision-making and relationships that was previously dulled by the urge to catch up. Alex found a grounded satisfaction unavailable in his years of comparison. What makes this transformation so necessary and urgent is that the world's increasing interconnectedness shows no sign of slowing. Social media, workplace evaluations, and peer group dynamics will continue to provide endless opportunities for comparison. Adopting the discipline of self-focused reflection is a deliberate act of mental health preservation, a stand against a culture that unconsciously profits from your insecurity. If left unchecked, the comparison trap can steer whole lives quietly off course and breed bitterness. Taking control of where you direct your focus is not merely a self-help tip. It is a foundational habit to protect your fulfillment in a distracting age. When you let go of measuring your life by others, you commit to a gentler self-respect and meaningful growth that roots you more deeply than the pursuit of fleeting advantages ever could. Breaking free from the cycle of comparison starts with a conscious choice and grows with small, daily commitments to redirect your focus toward your own journey. Begin by setting a clear intention each morning. Before you look at your phone, glance in the mirror and quietly say, "Today I measure progress by my own growth, not someone else's." This shift in mindset places your attention firmly where it belongs, on what you can control and what is uniquely valuable about your experience. During the day, be vigilant for moments when you find yourself slipping into comparison. Whenever you notice that familiar mindset, whether envy, discouragement, or the feeling of not being enough, pause and name it. This is a comparison thought. Labeling it with neutral awareness helps to break the automatic spiral and invites you to make a different choice in how you proceed. Next, create a daily ritual centered on your personal progress. At the end of each day, write down one thing you did or learned that moved you a step closer to your goals. This could be a new skill practiced, a kind conversation, or simply a moment you chose self-care over pressure. Over time, this journal becomes a living proof of your journey, building confidence in your ability to grow regardless of external markers. Celebrate even the smallest breakthrough, such as realizing you felt less envy in a situation that once triggered you, or noticing you offered encouragement to another person instead of engaging in subtle competition. These are not insignificant. Each act of support for yourself plants seeds for greater freedom and joy in your life. Introduce the practice of gratitude aimed specifically at your own experience. When you latch onto someone else's apparent success, gently turn your attention to something genuine in your day, no matter how simple, that brings satisfaction or warmth. The habit of naming 3 things you appreciate about your journey, rather than someone else's, retrains your mind to seek fulfillment in what you already possess instead of what seems missing. If you find social media particularly challenging, set healthy boundaries by limiting scrolling to short, predetermined windows or curating your feed to include voices that inspire without provoking comparison. Remember, your mental clarity is worth every boundary you put in place. Another valuable technique is to define success in your words, suited to your deepest values. Sit with a blank page and list what personal fulfillment means for you, exclusive of societal or peer benchmarks. Let these values guide future decisions, from career steps to relationships to the pursuits you embrace for fun or meaning. Over time, recalibrating your life to match your unique standards feels liberating and strengthens self-respect, gradually crowding out the urge to compare. With each effort, you will gather evidence of how much better life flows when it is lived against your own compass. The quiet victories that come, more ease, more clarity, generosity toward others are signs you are building a lasting foundation of self-worth. As you continue, prepare for the next transformative focus, becoming authentically free, where living true to yourself becomes your greatest act of courage. If this chapter has helped you shift even one comparison today, celebrate that win. And don't forget to connect with Mindset Liberation by subscribing and sharing a moment of breakthrough in the comments. Your story can spark hope for others choosing the same path to self-liberation. Chapter 7. Becoming Authentically Free. What if you woke up tomorrow and felt unshakably secure in your choices, your values, and your sense of self, regardless of pressure, judgment, or expectation? Imagine a life where you are no longer tethered to the approval of others or the need to perform roles that aren't yours. Becoming authentically free is not about rebellion for its own sake. It is about embracing the profound liberation found in living truthfully, aligning actions and words with your genuine convictions. This kind of freedom is less about circumstances and more about how you meet life, even when it asks something unexpected or uncomfortable of you. The yearning for authenticity lies at the heart of modern life, energized by a quiet rebellion against conformity and the heavy burden of masks we have been taught to wear. Throughout history, wise thinkers from Socrates to Maya Angelou have argued that the truest form of happiness springs from the courage to know and express one's real self. The roots of inauthenticity run deep, fed by years of social conditioning, workplace expectations, fear of exclusion, and even the noble wish to avoid conflict or pain for others. As a result, many people quietly shapeshift from one scenario to the next. A revealing survey by the research firm YouGov found that nearly 70% of adults admit to often presenting a version of themselves at work, in friendships, or online that does not reflect their true personality or beliefs. This kind of self-betrayal feels normal on the surface, but over time it erodes confidence, breeds resentment, and breeds a nagging emptiness that even achievement cannot seem to satisfy. Mental health experts warn that a lack of authenticity sits at the root of anxiety, chronic dissatisfaction, and self-alienation. Psychologist Dr. Brené Brown, well known for her research on vulnerability and courage, has shown that the most resilient and connected individuals are not those who appear strongest or most polished, but those who consistently honor their own truth, even in imperfect ways. Her work explains that living in an authentic manner is a learned skill. It begins with radical self-honesty and thrives through steady, everyday choices to reveal rather than conceal. The transformative effects are dramatic. Those who prioritize authenticity experience higher life satisfaction, stronger relationships, and a durable sense of inner peace. A real-world example mirrors these findings. Sarah, a senior executive who achieved every professional milestone, began to realize that her carefully curated persona at work and the real her at home had grown so far apart that she often felt invisible to both herself and her colleagues. Through coaching and sincere reflection, Sarah slowly began to bring her actual opinions, quirks, and boundaries into the workplace. Though it was at times unsettling, she found herself treated with newfound respect and forming connections based on genuine understanding instead of social currency. The anxiety that had cropped up around keeping up appearances began to dissolve, replaced with a steadier, heartfelt contentment. The journey toward authentic freedom is ongoing and full of possibility. As you begin to dismantle outdated expectations and claim ownership of your story, you'll find that your life is richer, your connections deeper, and your confidence stronger. The invitation is clear. You have the power to become authentically free, and every step in that direction brings you closer to the life you were always meant to live. The effectiveness of becoming authentically free lies in its power to dissolve the root causes of anxiety, resentment, and deep internal conflict. When you live from a place of authenticity, you end the exhausting cycle of performance, self-censorship, and self-betrayal that keeps you perpetually restless and unsatisfied. Scientific research has repeatedly demonstrated that self-alignment, or the congruence between outward behavior and internal values, is essential for psychological health and happiness. One important study published in the Journal of Counseling Psychology tracked a large group of adults who intentionally shifted their daily behaviors to reflect their inner beliefs and preferences rather than responding automatically to external pressures. Over just a few months, participants who practiced authenticity reported marked reductions in symptoms of depression, social anxiety, and burnout, while also citing increases in energy, emotional stability, and overall life satisfaction. On a neurobiological level, alignment with your genuine self calms the body's stress response. Researchers at Stanford found that those who acted in ways consistent with their core values showed lower levels of cortisol and other stress hormones, translating into greater resilience and a capacity for joy. When you engage with life authentically, parts of the brain associated with reward and self-regulation become more active, further reinforcing both peace and purpose. This means that authenticity is not simply a desirable trait, but a practice that produces real biological change, a sort of positive loop that makes courage reward itself. To see this in vivid practice, consider Javier, a talented chef who spent years mimicking the cuisine and style of his mentors, believing it was safer to blend in and win approval than to cook from the heart. Though his career progressed, he felt little fulfillment and wrestled with chronic imposter syndrome and fatigue. Everything changed when Javier attended a retreat focused on values-based living. He began to experiment with incorporating flavors and recipes from his own family heritage into the restaurant menu, taking a risk that initially felt terrifying. The reception wasn't universally positive. Some old patrons resist change, but Javier was suddenly energized. He spent more time in joyful creation and noticed old pressure-related stomach aches and sleepless nights fade away. Over the following months, Javier's unique offerings gained their own following, and he was invited to speak about leadership, not just culinary skill, for his courage in charting a new course. For the first time, he felt genuinely seen and satisfied with the path he had chosen. Both science and lived experience affirm that being authentically free is far more than a matter of ego or self-expression. It is a solution to a wide range of psychological burdens, acting as the foundation for deeper integrity, trust, and personal peace. Living in alignment means your actions, words, and decisions arise from the same source as your beliefs, a state in which every part of you is unified and moving together. The urgency to embody this freedom is clear when you remember how much of your life can be lost or close off under the weight of pretending, pleasing, or hiding. Breaking the cycle of inauthenticity brings not just relief, but opens the possibility of a life marked by fulfillment, creativity, and authentic connection. Becoming authentically free is a living journey that unfolds through purposeful, daily actions. Begin your path by setting aside a quiet moment at the start of each day to ask yourself a grounding question. How do I truly want to show up today? Take a few slow breaths and listen, honestly, for an inner response that isn't shaped by what others might expect from you. Map out a simple intention based on that response, even if it's as basic as vowing to speak honestly in meetings or allowing yourself downtime without guilt. These micro-resolutions are small wins that build the muscle of authenticity. Each morning's check-in, as it becomes habit, will nudge you gently away from autopilot personas and remind you of the values you're working to honor. When you go about your routine, practice the art of noticing where you feel off balance or not quite yourself. If you catch yourself putting on a mask, perhaps laughing at a joke that unsettles you, or nodding along when you secretly disagree, pause and silently name what you wish you'd said or done. This simple moment of acknowledgement, free of judgment, plants the seeds for more direct self-expression in the future. Jotting down these moments in a pocket-sized notebook or your phone, along with what you wish you could have expressed, shows over time that patterns of self-betrayal are neither total nor permanent. They are clues pointing the way back to honesty. A powerful daily exercise to encourage genuine living is the courageous conversation ritual. Choose one small, low-stakes situation where you can speak a little more truthfully than you normally would. Maybe expressing an opinion with a close friend, politely disagreeing with a colleague, or admitting when you don't know something. Later, celebrate your effort regardless of the outcome. Noticing the relief and strength that follows is a reward on its own and slowly builds your resilience for even bolder moments. Likewise, applying gentleness with yourself is key. When you slip into old habits or feel the urge to retreat into falsehoods, offer a phrase of grace. I am learning to be real, even if it feels awkward. Over time, turning mistakes into learning opportunities helps authenticity become an ongoing practice, not a prickly verdict of success or failure. At the end of every week, take 5 quiet minutes to reflect on where you took steps toward your authentic self and where you held back. Notice any patterns. Are there environments or relationships where you feel most comfortable being yourself? Are there triggers that prompt you to hide? Understanding these details allows you to curate spaces and connections that support authentic living while developing a plan to gently challenge settings or moments where you shrink. Each honest reflection sows confidence, and real growth often looks like gradual increments rather than overnight transformation. Every act of alignment, however small, signals to your mind and body that it is safe to belong to yourself first. Over time, you'll find that choices made from authenticity require less effort and deliver more peace than the energetic cost of maintaining a mask. Resist the urge to rush or label yourself as an imposter for hesitating. The journey is as much about self-forgiveness and playful experimentation as it is about bold declarations. Pursue your freedom through these daily acts, knowing that what you practice regularly becomes the blueprint for the life you're designing. As the final destination approaches, prepare to integrate all you have learned and reflect on the extraordinary shifts made possible by choosing the path of authenticity, proof that you hold the keys to your own liberation. You have traveled through an honest exploration of the roots and remedies of the ego, uncovering the invisible traps of comparison, the pressures of perfection, and the silent weight of self-criticism that shape mental health. Each chapter of this book has offered you evidence-based tools and courageous new mindsets, from detaching from false identities to practicing radical acceptance, and finally stepping into authenticity. Through engaging stories, science-backed strategies, and practical exercises, you have discovered that true freedom begins the moment you dare to meet yourself with honesty and compassion, and to shape your path according to your real values instead of expectations. Remember, transformation is not about a single leap, but about steady, brave steps taken with insight and care. Thank you for journeying this far and investing the energy to break free from the silent grip of the ego. If this book has inspired you or sparked new thoughts, please let us know. Don't forget to like this video, share your reflections in the comments, and subscribe to Mindset Liberation for more practical guidance. Your voice and commitment are what make this community and your progress possible.